Hello and welcome to Unhacked. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm Brian Graff, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Abacode Cybersecurity and Compliance. We are here every Thursday at 4 p.m., or we try to be, Eastern, to take you through a cyber topic of the week. We cover the what, the when, the where, and the why for the most recent attacks and security events, or as recent as we can, and provide you with key takeaways on what you can learn from the attack and keep it from happening to you. Today on Unhacked, chipmaker Intel Corporation was recently the victim of an intellectual property hack. An anonymous source has leaked a folder of highly sensitive documents from Intel, including yet-to-be-released chip internal designs and schematics. Per an article in SC Magazine, a software engineer posted that link to a folder on Twitter. Twitter has since suspended the account. The source stated they were able to compromise a web server supporting Intel's Resource and Design Center, which is used to share documents between Intel and business partners. Intel responded to the report, stating they did not believe the attack was facilitated through an exploited server. Intel issued the following statement: "We are investigating this situation. The information appears to come from the Intel Resource and Design Center, which hosts information for use by our customers, our partners, and other external parties who have registered for access. We believe an individual with access downloaded and shared this data." The source of the stolen folder also stated that password-protected copies of the folders were most likely already making their way across the internet and posted a password believed to unlock the folders. To add insult to injury, the source has insisted that the password was already on the files when breached. Though we will not repeat the password, it was extremely insecure. Now, depending on which version of the incident, either the hacker or Intel's, was correct, this breach could have been stopped by implementing the most basic security controls. If the hacker did compromise a web server, Intel could have protected themselves by doing the following in A, performing scheduled vulnerability scans using a scanning solution like Qualys or Tenable, and patching the vulnerabilities according to a defined patching schedule. Vulnerability scans should also be performed whenever a web server is deployed or a major change is made to the system, to ensure you did not accidentally create a hole while creating the change. Also, you should consider contacting a third party to perform a penetration test on your organization, where basically you pay a company like Abacode to hack you. If we succeed, and we do a scary large percentage of the time, we will provide you with the remediation steps to patch the holes we slipped through. B, configuring server images and other network devices and databases securely using CIS benchmarks or similar standards, such as Department of Defense Security Technical Guidelines or STIGs. These benchmarks are free to download and will guide you in hardening your network assets against common threats. They also enable security logging so that your system administrators can research potential activity and security events before they threaten your entire organization. This process can be automated using a configuration management solution like Puppet. Now, you might be asking, I have hundreds of servers, I have firewalls, databases, and cloud environments. How can I monitor all of those logs? That's impossible. You're right, it certainly is. In fact, it may be impossible for you to even read them. We've come a long way in security event logging, but unfortunately, even if your devices are configured correctly, your logs are not going to generate messages that says you've been hacked at 3 p.m., hacker downloaded your entire customer database, it's time to call your lawyer. There's a few reasons for this, but most importantly, a log from a single device won't have all the information you need to investigate a security incident. Think of devices in your network as witnesses to a jewelry store robbery. Your database and application servers are like people inside the store. They may see the robber scoop up the jewels, but they couldn't tell you what car they were driving. Your web servers are like the customer standing outside the store. They may see the direction the robbers went, but wouldn't be able to tell you what they took or even that a robbery happened. And if your logs aren't configured correctly or they aren't being stored, they aren't going to tell you anything. So what do? Well, once security logging is enabled, implementing a security information and event management system, or SIEM, such as AT&T's cybersecurity solution, formerly known as Alien Vault, or Logarithm, will aggregate and correlate all of your device logs to create a clear picture of who is doing what in your logical environment. Clear is a relative term. Any IT component requires expertise and core competency to configure and operate effectively. Just as applications require developers, databases require DBAs, SIEMs require security analysts. Hiring experienced resources or outsourcing the service to a dedicated security operations center, like us, will help ensure your SIEM is doing its job. But what if Intel is correct and the data was stolen not by somebody getting in through an insecure web server, but someone who already had access? Well, in that case, a SIM, again, if configured correctly, should be able to provide a listing of users that accessed and downloaded the stolen data. That should be enough to identify the perpetrator. However, there are additional steps you can take to help prevent this from happening in the first place. Step 1, reviewing access listings to sensitive data to ensure only those with valid business need have access. The larger an organization is, the more likely that access to sensitive data is provided to someone who doesn't need it or no longer needs it. Employees get transferred and are terminated, and if your HR, IT, and vendor management functions aren't communicating effectively, that access list will be much longer than it needs to be. 2, ensuring third-party organizations with access to your sensitive data run background checks on their employees, require NDA signatures, and provide security awareness training. This may not catch every bad actor that a vendor unintentionally grants access to your data, but it will at least give you recourse if it happens. Also, it is reasonable to assume that a vendor organization that agrees to enforce these controls is taking security more seriously than one that does not. In fact, a great vendor will boast that they're already doing it in their agreements and on their websites. Step 3, installing a data loss prevention solution will prevent some, but not all, data exfiltration attacks. Data loss prevention, or DLP, works by tagging sensitive data, preventing it from being copied off the network, or in some cases, even tracking it after it leaves your network. DLP does not solve every problem, though. The entire point of Intel's partner network is to share this information. You can't lock it down and keep it from everyone. Now, I just discussed 5 or 6 security controls. There are hundreds. You might be thinking, how is an organization supposed to keep all of this straight and know what security mechanisms to implement? Thankfully, there are several different lists of controls your organization can use to determine which ones fit. Security standards such as NIST 853 and ISO 27001 have done most of the heavy lifting for you. There are standards for every industry and vertical out there. Some of them are free, some of them are proprietary. Downloading and reviewing these standards during a risk assessment is the first step in creating an effective security program for your organization. Risk assessment, I hear you asking. I don't need a risk assessment. And also, what is a risk assessment? Well, you see all the potential attack vectors I just talked about: insecure web servers, lack of security logging and monitoring. Those are risks. Some of them may apply to you, some of them may not. If your organization hosts hundreds of web servers but does not allow third parties access to your data, you would definitely want to focus more on vulnerability scanning and remediation and less on vendor security management. Essentially, that is all a risk assessment is: identifying as many of the risks to your organization as possible and ranking them in order of the danger they pose, and drafting ways to eliminate or reduce them. Again, you can do this internally or have a third party like us perform one for you. Now, earlier I said we would cover the most recent security events possible, and while compiling this information about this event, 2 other high-profile attacks occurred. GPS maker Garmin suffered a ransomware attack, and Japanese camera and printer giant Canon suffered both a ransomware and data exfiltration attack. We will try to get to those next week. But unfortunately, to the surprise of no one who works here, I've spoken way longer than I was supposed to. Again, my name is Brian Graff from Abacode, and if you find this information useful, please like and subscribe below and enable the notifications. See you next Thursday on Unhacked.